The restaurant was too bright, the music too loud, and Marcus already had his excuse ready. He'd stay exactly 7 minutes, long enough to be polite, short enough to claim a work emergency. His finger hovered over his phone, prepared to send the apologetic text he'd already composed, when he looked up and saw her. Sarah Chen. The name hit him like a physical force, stealing the air from his lungs. She sat at the corner table by the window, her dark hair catching the afternoon light exactly the way it had 15 years ago when they'd studied together in the university library. She hadn't seen him yet. She was nervously smoothing the napkin in her lap, glancing at her phone, and Marcus felt the entire world tilt on its axis. This couldn't be happening. His sister had set up this blind date, insisting he needed to get back out there after his divorce. She'd been annoyingly vague about the woman, saying only that she was a friend of a friend, someone special who deserved to meet someone decent. Never, not in a million years, had Marcus imagined it would be Sarah. His Sarah. Well, she'd never really been his, had she? That was the problem. Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, transported back to that spring semester of senior year. He'd been a scholarship kid working 3 jobs, running on coffee and determination, trying to prove he belonged at that prestigious university. Sarah had been the brilliant pre-med student who'd smiled at him in Chemistry 101, who'd invited him to join her study group, who'd made him feel like he mattered when most days he'd felt invisible. He'd fallen for her slowly, then all at once. The way she'd tap her pen against her textbook when she was thinking. How she'd bring extra snacks to study sessions because she'd noticed he sometimes skipped meals. The warmth in her eyes when she'd told him about her dream of opening a clinic in an underserved neighborhood. She'd been everything good in the world, and he'd been terrified to tell her how he felt. Then came that night at the end of semester party. He'd finally worked up the courage, had the words ready, when her boyfriend, Marcus hadn't even known she had a boyfriend, showed up. James something, from one of those families where the buildings on campus bore their name. Handsome, confident, with an easy smile and a trust fund. Everything Marcus wasn't. He'd watched Sarah's face light up when she saw James, and he'd swallowed his confession along with his pride. 2 weeks later, at graduation, he'd hugged her goodbye and walked away, convincing himself it was for the best. She deserved someone who could give her the world. He could barely afford his own rent. Now, 15 years later, Marcus was different. He'd built a successful career as a civil engineer, designing infrastructure projects that brought clean water to communities that had never had it. His divorce had been painful but amicable. He and Jennifer had wanted different things, and they'd been mature enough to admit it. He'd grown into himself, grown comfortable with who he was. But seeing Sarah again made him feel like that uncertain 22-year-old all over again. She looked up, and their eyes met. Her expression cycled through confusion, shock, and then something that looked remarkably like joy. She stood up, her hand flying to her mouth. Marcus. Sarah. He moved toward the table on autopilot, his prepared excuses evaporating. I had no idea, my sister set this up, and she didn't tell me. My friend Rachel. She didn't tell me either. She just said. Sarah laughed, a slightly breathless sound. She said I needed to trust her. That she'd found someone perfect. They stood there awkwardly for a moment before Sarah gestured to the chair. Since we're both here, unless you need to leave. No, Marcus said too quickly. No, I don't need to leave. They sat, and Marcus noticed the details. The laugh lines around her eyes. The absence of a wedding ring. His sister had at least confirmed his date was single, thank God. The fact that she still twisted her hair around her finger when she was nervous, just like before. So, Sarah said, her smile tentative. 15 years. 15 years, Marcus echoed. You look great, Sarah. So do you. Different. More. She paused, considering. More settled in yourself. They ordered coffee, neither of them particularly interested in food, and began to catch up. Sarah told him about medical school, her residency, how she'd married James. Marcus's heart clenched, but they'd divorced after 4 years. He was a good person, she said carefully, but we wanted different things. He wanted the country club life, the social circuit. I wanted to practice medicine in communities that actually needed it. Did you ever open that clinic? Marcus asked, remembering her old dream. Her face transformed. I did. 6 years ago. We serve 3 underserved neighborhoods now. It's everything I wanted it to be. She paused. What about you? Are you still saving the world one equation at a time? He was surprised she remembered. Actually, yes. I work on water infrastructure projects internationally. Last year, we brought clean water to 40,000 people in rural Kenya. Marcus, that's incredible. The pride in her voice was genuine, and it made something warm unfold in his chest. They talked for an hour, then two. The conversation flowed like no time had passed, but better somehow, deeper. They weren't kids anymore. They'd both been broken and had pieced themselves back together. They'd both chosen careers focused on helping others, on being of service. Finally, Sarah's expression turned serious. Can I tell you something? Something I've felt guilty about for 15 years. Marcus's pulse quickened. Of course. At graduation, I knew you were going to tell me something. I could see it in your face. And I got scared, so I made sure James came to that party. I made sure you saw us together. She looked down at her coffee. Because I knew what you were going to say, and I was afraid. Afraid. Marcus could barely breathe. You were so good, Marcus. So genuine and kind and determined. You made me want to be better. And I was terrified because what I felt for you was so much bigger than what I felt for James. James was safe. James was what was expected. You were the unknown. The leap of faith. She finally met his eyes. And I was too much of a coward to jump. The restaurant had gone quiet around them, or maybe Marcus just couldn't hear anything over the pounding of his heart. I walked away because I thought I wasn't enough for you, he said quietly. I thought you deserved someone who could give you everything. You idiot, Sarah said, but she was smiling, her eyes bright with unshed tears. You were everything. You were the only person who saw me, not just the straightest student or the doctor-to-be. Just me. Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. It fit in his exactly right. I almost canceled today, he admitted. I had the text ready and everything. Me too, Sarah laughed. I was absolutely prepared to fake a medical emergency. I'm glad you didn't. Me too. They sat there, hands intertwined, and Marcus thought about the strange way life works. How you can make what you think is the right choice, walk away from something precious, spend 15 years becoming who you're meant to be, only to find yourself right back where you started. Except this time, they were both ready. This time, they were both brave enough to jump. So, Sarah said, her thumb tracing circles on his palm. What do we do now? Marcus smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months. How about we start with dinner? A real date. Not blind this time. I'd like that, Sarah said. I'd like that very much. Outside, the sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Inside, two people who'd almost missed their chance were choosing, finally, to take it. Sometimes the universe gives you a second chance. Sometimes kindness returns when you least expect it. And sometimes, the person you were always meant to find has been waiting for you all along, just around the corner, at a table by the window.